If you are a parent of an athlete, I want you to hear this. You are already your kid's most powerful mental performance coach. It's not me. It's not their strength coach. It's not their varsity coach. It's you. The way you talk in the minivan, at the dinner table, and after games is literally wiring your athlete's brain for either confidence or anxiety. That is a lot of pressure, and it's kind of daunting. And that's why I created my free email course called the Resilient Parents Playbook. In it, I walk you through the 5 most common mistakes we make as sports parents, and I give you simple, practical tools to fix them. You'll learn how to praise effort and attitude instead of just results, how to handle the car ride home, and how to help your kid manage nerves and pressure in a healthy way. It's completely free. Just hit the link in the show notes and grab the Resilient Parents Playbook and start becoming the kind of mental coach your athlete actually needs at home.
This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, where we explore how to forge mental toughness and resilience in every aspect of life. Welcome, I'm your host, Coach Matt Toman. I'm an ICF certified professional coach with a background as a teacher, basketball coach, and athletic director. But my journey took a dramatic turn in 2020 when I survived both cancer and a stroke. Those experiences shaped my mission, help others grow stronger in every facet of life. Today, I work with athletes, coaches, educators, and anyone who believes that positive mental health is both achievable and a personal responsibility. This podcast is dedicated to helping listeners develop a positive version of toughness, one rooted in resilience, focus, and growth. Whether you're looking to excel on the field, in the classroom, or in life, this is your space to learn, grow, and take action. Join me on this journey, and together, let's forge your mettle.
All right, here we go. It's the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Toman, and I've got another great episode today. My guest today is another Olympian, USA Olympian, and I have been just blessed with a connection with Shane Fisher of the American Paragons Association. It's an organization that supports underfunded, which I'm finding out is most underfunded Olympians. It's not what we think, in the sense that most Olympians, the ones you think of are the ones that we know because they're household names. They get some funding, they get endorsements, but the vast majority do not. And it is eye-opening to me that they don't get that much funding, but they still have so much passion for it, which makes every one of them a phenomenal guest on the Mental Mettle Podcast, because they don't have time to mess around. They've got jobs. They've putting their life on the line to do this. Like, when I say that, I mean, like, they maybe not life on the line, but they put their life on hold for this. This is all they do. It's everything they've got. So they don't mess around with things that don't work. And so they work on every aspect, physically and mentally, and make them, again, great guests. This is my guest today is no exception. Another great example. If you like this one, or if you like this idea, I've had several Olympians on: climber, biker, bobsledder, all sorts of things. Gabby Jacobs I just had on. She's an American and national champion discus thrower. So many. And they're just great interviews. And so my guest today is Alex Young, and he's an American hammer thrower and weight thrower. He Olympian in 2020 and a former NCAA national champion. So some credibility there. He grew up in Laverne, Tennessee, just out of Nashville. And he started out, as most throwers, as a football and weight room kid before a high school coach said, hey, you might want to join track. So he jumped in and started throwing shot put, hammer, things like that, and got into it, went on a scholarship, ended up at Southeastern Louisiana University, where he made school history in 2016 by winning the NCAA Division I national title in indoor weight throw. and it was the first national championship of anything in that for his school there. And he went on to finish second in the 2017 NCAA hammer throw and started racking up conference titles and establish himself as one of the premier collegiate throwers in the country. Internationally, he went on, has represented Team USA in the Pan American Junior Games, the NACAC Under 23 Championships, the World Championships, and then the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. Placed 12th at the 2022 World Athletics Championship and continues to be just a fixture at the U.S. Track and Field Championships. What makes him a really, really good fit for this show, though, is he is an athlete, but he also is deeply into sports psychology and even wrote a thesis in college on how self-talk affects neuromuscular performance. Talk about like that connection between our thoughts and our embodiment and our muscles is exactly the sort of thing I geek out about, and it's awesome. He also meets and talks with younger athletes, and he talks about finding their superpower and how to lean into their strengths so that they can build their confidence and use that to build their game. And he's also a committed Christian, and he approaches training and competition as an act of worship and competing for what he calls an audience of one, and just grounding everything in the idea of Colossians 3:23, which is my favorite verse as well, and just the idea of to do your labor unto the Lord and not for human masters. So, man, when I get meeting with Alex here, like I just felt a real connection with him. And then after his career peak in 2022, Alex went through a couple of his toughest professional years. He lost his confidence, had to change coaches and environments, and is now in a rebuilding phase with his eyes on the 2028 LA Olympics. And it's not just to get back where he was, but to go beyond it, working and competing, but doing it in that audience of one mindset. So we're going to dig into that entire journey. It's so good. And what he thinks about true mental toughness, faith, positive psychology, and just doing everything for the Lord and that audience of one. It is, I say it all the time. This is one of my favorite interviews I've done. Alex is phenomenal, and he is exactly what I'm looking for on the Mental Mettle Podcast. So enjoy the interview.
Your athlete probably spends hours working on the specific skill set they need for their sport, and they probably spend hours in the weight room building their body. But how much time do they spend intentionally training their mind? Well, building mindset is the key to bridging the gap between the skills that we see and game execution. Well, Mental Mettle Coaching provides individual programs that can help your athlete develop this third and crucial skill set. All right, here we go. It's the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Toman, here with my guest today, USA Track and Field member Alex Young. How you doing, Alex?
I'm good. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the show.
Hey, I'm pretty stoked. So you've got I see you're from the Nashville area. Is that correct?
That is correct. I put Nashville on everything because it's easiest to identify for people. But I'm actually originally from Laverne, Tennessee, which is just about 20 minutes south on I-24.
Yeah. No, I lived on I-24 north of Nashville for about 3 years up in White House area. So I'm aware of the area. Yeah. So when I saw Laverne, I'm like, oh, he's a Nashville guy. So so that's cool. What's the I want to get into your background, not straight to being on, USA, all that, but what's the background in Laverne there? You're in high school. When do you say, hey, this is like throwing a heavy object is something that I'm good at and I want to do for like a career?
I mean, it didn't really start until my sophomore year of high school, to be honest with you. My coach at the time, Coach Mark Stevens, who's actually down at IMG Academy now, coaching throws. He walks into the weight room one day. my sophomore year, and he asked, "Hey, is anybody interested in doing track and field?" Right. So him and alongside the head coach, Coach Al Evans, right? So they walk in, and everybody's like, "Hmm, I don't know, we'll see," right? So for me, it was yeah, I want to try that because the year prior, right, that summer, I actually saw Reese Hoffa in the shot put at the Olympic Games, and I think that was London. I'm pretty sure it feels like
Yeah.
forever ago. I saw Reese Hoffa and a bunch of the other guys, in the world throwing the shot put really far, and I was like, man, those dudes are real strong. They're throwing this metal ball far. They get to yell at it. I was like, sign me up. I want to do something like that. So fast forward to that day where my coach walks in and asks if anybody wants to throw or run track. I was one of the first guys over there because I remembered that day and I was like, yeah, I want to do that same thing. So that's kind of how it kickstarted. Yeah.
So were you in the weight room because you were doing football or something else?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So,
I'm yeah.
yeah. So in Tennessee, how it goes. I mean, really in the South in general, football is king, right? That was year two of football, actually. My mom refused to let me play football in middle school. And
Really?
so I had a chance to play my freshman year. And I just so happened to be one of the strongest kids on my team. We always did our weights and stuff. And I think around that time, I think we were in spring, so we were able to do weights after school. And so that's when the track coach walked in and kind of asked us, "Hey, are you interested in doing this thing?"
It's I've interviewed a couple throwers at fairly high levels. I don't think it's anybody's first choice.
Very rarely, right?
In fact, I feel like track and field is kind of that way overall.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, for the most part, unless you're, yeah, no, yeah, I don't even really think of examples. Yeah, it's true.
Unless
Yeah,
like
it's
your parents,
virtually.
if your parents were into it or something like that, and they said I want but for the most part, it's like you do a sport and then some weight or strength coach or track coach goes, "Hey, I see you're really fast or you're really strong. Why don't you come do this?"
Yep, that's honestly how it goes, which is so interesting. I mean, because if you look at the Team USA's dominance over the inception of the Olympic Games, I mean, we've dominated nearly from start to finish, and so it's super interesting to see how here in the U.S. we find the sport so late, yet end up executing at the highest level, right? Versus
Dude, there
the
there
rest of the world.
there might be a lesson in there. I don't know how deep we want to go into that, Alex, but that might be like part of you know what I'm saying? Like, because
Yeah,
if you don't even start it till high school, you probably don't have a chance to get burnt out on it. And
good point.
I didn't even think about that, but that might be something I might have to look into that because like you said, it's not like kids get burnt out of some sports when they're young. How many football players quit because they're starting when they're in fourth and fifth grade, dad's yelling at them, they hate it and they don't
Hmm.
want to do it anymore. And that's not the case with throwing or running or I don't know. There might be something
That's
to that.
yeah, very right.
Okay. Well, anyway, so you're in high school, you get the bug to start throwing heavy objects and yelling at them, which is, I
Hmm.
mean, it's got to be fun. And then that leads, does that lead to a scholarship offer?
Yes. So just kind of quick accolade drop. So in high school, I was a state champion in the shot put. And this is where, thank goodness you're talking about mental toughness and sports psych stuff a little bit, right? Because I love this stuff. That same coach, Coach Mark Stevens, he told me that first year, as a sophomore, he's like, hey, you can win a state championship. And I looked at him, I was like, I don't know about that, right? And then, you fast forward my senior year, and that's exactly what I did. I won a state championship in the shot put, and was really close to winning one in the discus as well. And so, I think if it wasn't for him in that regard, I don't think I ever would have did that in high school, right? And then, kind of back to your original question, yes, that definitely led to a scholarship. And I think the thing with that one is that it wasn't so much that I was one of the best in the country. By any means, I was not. Tennessee throwing culture wasn't really there at the time. And so you had states like Ohio, Texas, California that are known for throwing, um, that obviously just destroy the list from 1 to like 50 probably, right?
Really?
And so, oh, 100%, right? So that was a whole different world to me. Like I said, I was still fairly new versus, people that are in those states, some of those, sometimes those are where you might see athletes that are actually start throwing when they're younger, right? Like middle
So
school
your
or
so your
whatever.
football recruits come from Tennessee and Texas, but your throwers run from. I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of
Oh
the
yeah.
case, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. And so I got a couple scholarship offers to play football. I continued to play football through my high school career alongside with track. And a couple football offers came through, but they weren't really anything that was substantial. And I definitely needed a scholarship that was going to help pay for school all the way.
Right.
And track was the one that got me the closest to that. And I had the better offers, and so I went with track and field. Never looked back.
Wait, oh, that was going to be my next question. Was that hard to let go of football to do, or was it like, hey, if you're going to give me money to do something, it's pretty easy?
No, it was definitely hard. I think football was definitely like my first true sports love outside of basketball when I was a kid. But football was the thing. I think I had good coaches, helped me get really strong, helped me build confidence. So it wasn't just the physical attributes of it. I built confidence. I felt like myself. I was able to express myself when I lifted weights, when I was out there able to go hit someone, right? When I was, playing football, right? So
Oh
I
yeah.
loved that. And so having to kind of change the route or the path that I was on, going from going to go hit someone to now it's like, what do you mean this is technical? I have to learn how to put my foot here, stay on
Right.
balance here, have this perfect time where I actually release a shot put or a discus and, eventually a hammer, right? Like that was so new to me because I was so used to, oh, all you got to do is just try harder and you'll get a better result, right? And it's still true in track, but it's more focused than what a football energy would be, right?
Yeah, I think so. Although I do think some of the ideas, I work with a lot of football guys now, and this is off topic, where that idea of all you got to do is just try harder and you'll get a different result. And I think that football is even starting to like get off of that a little bit and be like, listen, there's a smarter way to do things. We don't have to do like we don't have to do up downs the entire practice to win on Friday nights. There's other ways to do that, but it's definitely more technical and more focused on that in throwing and even running.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So which in college? So if what do you still throw and when did you like narrow that down?
So, I narrowed that down when I got to, I'll probably say after college, honestly. And so the first school I was at, my current coach, Andy Fryman, who was actually my first college coach who recruited me out of high school to Gardner Webb University. Uh, Same kind of similar thing happened where he told me I was going to be an Olympian one day, I was going to be a national champion one day in the hammer specifically, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. There's no way that's going to happen, right? And flash forward, years later, and I do a couple of those things. But
When you say a couple of those things,
yeah,
don't like yeah, I mean national champ, right?
yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, it's interesting you say that. Like you're talking about building confidence and doing stuff. You've mentioned it, but when you started, you didn't really feel like you didn't have these grand goals or thoughts on I was going to be this Olympic champion, or Olympic thrower, or national champion. Is it? I mean,
I
correct?
mean, that's pretty, yeah, because I'm very analytical. So I used to think of things in terms of baby steps, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to ask me what were my goals when I first got to college as a thrower, I was like, like year one, I just wanted to make it to conference. Year
Right.
year two, let's try to compete for a conference medal. Year three, let's try to go to regionals, maybe nationals. Year four, become an All-American kind of thing, right? But that completely was tossed out of the window year one. I had a super knowledgeable coach. I'm getting really strong, thank the Lord for my genetics, things like that. they had a good training environment where, year one, I barely missed out on at nationals for indoors by, I think it was like 6 inches for the indoor weight throw. And then outdoor, I missed it by like 2 feet. And that was basically just a sector line, right? So it was a sector
Yeah.
line foul throw, the difference between me making nationals and not that first year. And then second year, I just completely jumped that next, level.
Well, I spent most of my time when I do work as a mental performance coach doing the opposite with kids, right?
Yeah.
Like saying, "Oh, I'm going to go to the NBA or I'm going to get this D1 scholarship and whatever." And we have to say, "Listen, you can't, that can't be your focus when you go to practice every day. Your goal today needs to be, I need to get better at this a little bit at a time." The fact
Right.
that you had that naturally, I don't know if you know this is a huge benefit for you. The fact that you were just, you know what I'm saying, that
Yeah.
you were just kind of wired that way.
hmm
Is that, can you point where that came from?
Um,
You said you were analytical. Is that kind of what it is?
yeah, I think, yeah, I've always been a deep thinker and kind of pragmatically thought about steps to take in order to achieve a goal, in the most logical sense. And so that was kind of how I did it. And like I said, with my achievements through high school, with there that was lifting, throwing, and football, it was kind of that like make a natural progression of getting slightly better. The better you get at the small things, the more the overall performance became.
Yeah, I think that's really, there's something to be said for like when we get in the weight room, we know here's what I can squat, here's what I can bench, here's what I can deadlift. And you can be like, once you do it a while, you can be like, I can only gain so much each time I go in the weight room, right? Like I can get a little bit better, a little bit better. When you're throwing hammer shot, it's kind of the same way, right? Like I hear today I had this, I can add maybe 6 inches this year or another foot or 2 feet, whatever. And when it lends itself to that analytical mindset, whereas maybe playing football or basketball, which is so many more other factors,
hmm
it doesn't fit as well. But for what you're doing, it definitely fits.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. So yeah, I think that's been the coolest part. And I think it also comes at a little bit of a fault, right? Like I think at some points in there, right? Like, I talked about, coaches telling me I could do these great things and I'm
Right.
going, I don't know if that's true. I think it also has kind of a negative component to it too, because now I've started to break out of that. But originally it was like I was putting a ceiling on how good I could be.
Yes. And that, I mean, that's a problem too, right? Like you do have to, it's so, I mean, it's so hard to try to find that line because we got to have these goals for us,
hmm
but then we got to have the steps to get to the goals. But you say that you're putting yourself on a ceiling, putting the ceiling there, but you kept working. So it wasn't like it stopped you from working.
Right.
So I don't feel like, I don't know that you'd be anywhere different if if you hadn't been putting a ceiling on yourself. I don't know. It's an interesting thought though.
Yeah, it is, and I think and that's where, I talk a lot about confidence and things. So like if I'm talking to like college athletes or I'm at these various meets and things like that, or just younger professionals, I'm saying, hey man, just be confident in your ability. Just remember the day to day is important, right? I think I spent a lot of my younger career of I mean, I enjoyed the small work in practice, but it was just enough because I knew it was going to make me better when it came time to play a game or get into at a meet, right?
Sure.
And so that was my mindset for a very long time.
Yeah. It's kind of a youth mindset. It's hard to,
Yep.
it's a very, what we're talking about is a very mature thing. And again, it's something you didn't, not that you're mature when you're a sophomore in high school, but you're more mature than a sixth grader.
Right.
So you have a little bit more time to think about that. So when you do go talk to these athletes, college, whatever, and you're talking about confidence, what is the Alex Young take on confidence?
All right. So it's pretty simple, honestly. I'm kind of a nerd. I love video games. I love comic books. I love those kinds of things. So I love to kind of talk to people like, I say, what's your superpower, right? What's the thing that you're really good at, okay? Or the couple things that you're really good at. Once you figure out the things that you're really good at, use that, right? Hone those skills, cultivate those, right? And be really confident that you're good at those things, those two or three things, that one thing, right? In some cases, right? Like, you're the best at that. Go exploit it, use it to the max.
I love it. When I'm working with high school teams and going in and I have them sit down and do that. And I'm like, hey, and I do this thing like a top 10 list. There's a
Hmm.
great book out there. I stole it from, I don't know if you've ever read the Confident Mind. It's fantastic. And he talks
Okay.
about that, about you got to build your own your top 10 list, like things that
Hmm.
you've accomplished, done well. And I sit down with these athletes and ask them to start to create that. And it
Hmm.
is like, they're like, I've never even thought about doing this. And I'm like,
Hmm.
well, how often do you spend thinking about the mistakes you've made? And they're like, oh, well, all the time. I'm like, well, no wonder you don't have confidence, because you're
Yep.
spending all your time thinking about all your failures. And we have to look at what we fail at in order to get better, but you have to spend just as much time or more believing in yourself and what you've done well. And
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't think it's taught. So I love how you're doing it. The idea of a superpower, it's fantastic.
I appreciate that.
So give me, oh man, I'm gonna love this. You're a comic book, you're a video game nerd, all that. What is your metaphorical superpower? Like,
Oh,
yeah,
that
see,
was a good
this
one.
is a this is a fun question, right? This is like a coaching session here, so I'm kind of getting a little bit sideways, but since you're into it, I love it.
Okay, so I think I would say I think it used to be brute strength at one point in time, just because
Okay,
I did not have the technical basis to be a super technical thrower, right? So early on in the career, I would say I was the Hulk, right? That was my imaginary. I
okay.
put myself in a superhero's place. I'm the Incredible Hulk when I step into the room.
Hulk throw, got it.
Absolutely, that's my
Yeah,
favorite
got it.
superhero.
Yeah,
And then as I've gotten older, a little more mature, um, and I've started to learn how to use those strengths within the technical model, the technical system that I'm working through, I've actually kind of really started to appreciate superheroes more that are more cunning, but they still have strength, and they have a little more finesse. So like a Black Panther is actually
okay,
really
yeah.
awesome for me personally. And Batman, I think, are like the two that I really like to internalize and say, these are the people that you are because A, they're still very strong, right? But also they have the very high mental capacity to execute the things that we're trying to execute.
I love that answer because you took something that you were naturally gifted at and said, I'm going to keep that, but
Hmm.
I'm going to add something I'm not necessarily naturally gifted at, and I have to create. And
Yep.
that is, dude, that's fantastic. I love that stuff. That's really good. Um, so then where are you now um, in your hammer or your, wherever you're throwing? Like, where are you in your journey right now?
So right now in my journey, I'm actually in like a rebuilding phase.
Okay.
The last couple years, so after 2022, I made the World Championships, had my highest finish ever on the world stage. I finished 12th in the world. I thought the sky was the limit. I thought my next step was let's crack the top eight. Let's try to make a real Olympic final, go do
Sure.
that thing and then push for a medal, right? In 2024. But 2023 and 2024 statistically were my worst professional seasons ever. And so with that, I changed my training environment, got a new coach, things like that, got a sports psychologist to really evaluate what needed to change, so I could get not only back to where I was, but better. Because I don't really like saying get back to where I was because I think I'm so much better than where I
Yep.
was,
I trust
right?
me. I feel that. Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, and so right after the Olympic trials in 2024, had my worst finish ever at a major. I finished ninth, just missed the final. That was the
Mm,
first time I missed the final since 2017. So you can imagine I've been able to finish top three for years, right? And so you get pushed back by that and lose a bunch of confidence. And so I've spent the last, I guess, last year and a half, almost 2 years now, of really just getting back to what made the sport fun for me, two, what are my strengths, and then three, let's see how far I can push this thing. And now, I have kind of an end goal in sight. In 2028 is kind of like my last go around, and so I really wanted to make sure I left no stone unturned, no matter how difficult it was.
And that meant actually almost stepping away and reevaluating.
100%. Absolutely.
That's man. We're starting to see in some of that in the most recent Olympics, some athletes that had left and come back. And I'm
Hmm.
telling you, it's like, it doesn't have to be, I don't think it has to be long stretches, but I think it needs to be done occasionally at times. So what's the insight you got from stepping away that like what are the truths that you're like, okay, now I know this?
I think for me, I think the truth now, remember why you do it. I think that's number one. Number two, have fun, right? Um, and then enjoy the process is number three, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I was telling you before, I didn't love the process. I liked the process because I knew the outcome was going to be really good.
Yeah.
But now, as I've matured and took that step back, I realized I actually do love the small
Yeah.
things, right? And I can love them more. And I think coming at it with a sense of gratitude has actually propelled my training much more last year, but especially this time around, right? Currently, like this is the most enjoyment I've had from training in a long time.
Yeah. I think that people love to say, enjoy the process, love the process. What they're not thinking is that means that I love the process regardless of the results.
Yes.
And if once you can separate those two, then you've got it. But
Hmm.
that means that you got to be like, even if I quote unquote fail, I'm going to be happy with myself because I enjoyed the process, and it
Right.
wasn't for nothing. It was because I liked the process.
Absolutely.
Um, that's a hard lesson, or that's a hard thing to teach kids because we're very outcome based. I mean, we give
Right.
medals for that for a reason. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? Like so it really is hard to separate it because you wouldn't be doing this if they didn't give medals somewhere, but you have to remove yourself from that.
Hmm.
Man,
So,
that's not easy,
yeah,
man.
it's not easy, and I think what's really kept me grounded and all that too is my faith as well, and ultimately the scripture that I really kind of model what I've been doing the last couple of years um, is do all your labor as unto the Lord, right? So I really try to sanctify my sessions, as you will, whether it's in the weight room, whether it's outdoors training, really using that as like as my time to praise God and really exemplify what it means to live as a living sacrifice to
Yeah.
Christ, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, you're throwing out. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see it over my shoulder there, but that's Colossians 3:23 there. Whatever you
Nice.
do, for the Lord, right?
Yes.
That's so I like that drives me. I'm not out there throwing shot or doing anything, but it drives me in everything that I do, that I'm trying to do, and knowing that I'm not doing this for somebody else. I'm doing this for the Lord, and that changes.
Hmm.
Man, it changes everything for you. Is that a newer idea for you, or is that something you've always kind of felt that?
I've always kind of felt that. But I think when I was younger, I still kind of maturing in the faith, right? Still drinking of the spiritual milk and the spiritual Gerber food, as you will.
There you go. Yeah.
You're still, you still kind of fall back on old tendencies, right? So like I've always
Yeah.
struggled with like insecurity or lack of confidence, especially early on like that. So I always kind of reverted back. So there was more of these like on off seasons. But I think as of late, especially after those last two seasons of just being like, okay, I'm at the bottom. There's not a whole lot left for me to do that I could make it really any worse, right? especially being a high performance athlete, it was really leaning on to the faith more and allowing God to mature me spiritually, to handle, right, and become, I should say, yeah, I should say, handle that type of, I would say, honestly, embarrassment, right? Like, because
Yeah, yeah.
you train so hard, and you end up nowhere near, what you were or what you had done before. So a lot of ways it creates this humility, right? Um, and I think the ability to have that humility, that perseverance, Paul likes to talk a lot in the gospel, in what he writes about the long suffering, find
Hmm.
joy in the long suffering. And so I think last season was a very big step in that for me in terms of loving the process, is learning how to find joy in the long suffering. And
Yeah.
then at the end of the day, you will find, you will get to your prize, right? And so that's really kind of been where I've been.
It's so when Paul talks to us about finding thanks in all things, the context is really important there to know that
Hmm.
he wrote that from a prison cell.
Yep.
It's like, so it's easy to give thanks to thanks to the Lord Christ after I win this game, but
Yep.
it's that's what we see on Sports Center, right? That's the easy. The hard is, you know when I lost and when things got bad. But I mean, that's where you find yourself, and that's where you really learn to lean on it. And I
Absolutely.
love that you're saying all that. I was looking at your Instagram and saw you had a couple quotes there, or had a couple. I couldn't help but notice you had Job 23:10 in there that ends in the word gold. That was probably not on accident, correct?
Yeah, it's funny. So a lot of the scripture, if you catch it, there's truly a message there, and it's
Yeah,
typically what I'm experiencing at that time. It's never just the, oh, let me search up this scripture real quick. There's
right.
usually that time of my life, or that specific instance. It always has a purpose that's applicable to that time.
Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, we're getting into and I don't mind it, but we're really getting into a discussion here that, like, I found that the more time I find myself spending time in the Word, I've run into stuff that's applicable, right? So it's like,
Hmm.
oh, I didn't know I needed to hear that, but I picked up I was reading this today, and I'm like, oh, that's really helpful. I'm sure glad I picked up my Bible today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're a believer in Christ as well, and so you understand that the Word is living, right?
Yep.
Uh, and
That's
so
yeah.
it's true. I think a lot of times God has revealed so many things to me, just from reading the Scripture.
Yeah.
And people look for signs. Some people have the gift of prophecy, things like that. But sometimes it's, most of the time it's really open up the word and God's literally speaking to you. You just have to
He's
open it
yeah.
up.
Yeah, I agree. So we've kind of touched on it, Alex, but let's make it real clear here. This is the Mental Metal Podcast. We're talking about mental toughness, and we've talked about confidence and some things like that. But I want to, how do you feel like mental toughness and competing? How do you think that's how do you think being a believer affects that, and vice versa? Like, how do you, like, what do you
Hmm.
draw from being a believer to help you compete, and what are you trying to show when you are competing? And I just it's not a very well crafted question, but hopefully you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think so. Stop me if I go off track a little bit, but um, I think what I was hearing, to answer your question, is I having that faith. Um, really allows me to compete freely, right? Liberated. And that's a word I'd love to use quite often, especially in Christ, right? It gives me an opportunity to be my true self because, and you already talked about this, we have an audience of one, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I view myself. So anytime I step into a circle, whether it's at practice, whether it's in a competition with 10 people or with thousands of people watching, At the end of the day, it's God is looking over that cage and he is watching what I do because I want him to see that I'm putting my best foot forward for Christ
Mhm.
every single time I step into that circle, right? Even if I've fallen short of that, which I have a bunch of times, my goal is to step into that circle. God, you're the only one that I care about. This is why I do it. And I want to leave it all in that circle, right? And so that's basically how it is.
Yeah, no, I love that idea.
Coaches, do you dream of guiding mentally tough athletes towards a championship? Kids that are resilient, persistent, and unshaken by setbacks. Well, in today's world, those athletes aren't born. They have to be developed. Many athletes face significant challenges and risk burnout. So, how do we foster that mental toughness without overwhelming them? Well, introducing the Ember to Inferno program, Building Mentally Tough Athletes. This series is designed specifically for coaches, offering a deep dive into your own journey of mental toughness and equipping you with practical tools to build confidence and belief in your athletes. Rather than just simply adding more adversity to their life, we focus on creating a strong foundation for mental resilience. You'll learn how to transform a spark of motivation into a blazing fire of toughness using techniques that address challenges like social media pressures, athletic stress, and trauma. Don't just wish for mentally tough athletes, build them. Join the Ember to Inferno program today and ignite the potential in your athletes. For more information, contact me, Coach Toman, at Mental Mettle Coaching.
So when I hear you talk about an audience of one of the problems I see in athletes is they compete with not with confidence, but with anxiety
Hmm.
and fear and worry and all these things that aren't good.
Right.
How does having an audience of one help minimize that?
I mean, I think just purely from if you think about a number standpoint, one is much easier to man or to work with versus 1,000, right?
Right.
And so I think it narrows the focus down solely to what you have to accomplish, right? And so instead of thinking about, I have all these different, you already have to think about it a lot, right? You're thinking about what you need to do in order to have to execute this perfect throw. You have the timing, you have where the ball's positioned, where are you in comparison to the ball, vice versa, right? You have all these different things to think about. Is it hot? Is it cold? Is my foot gonna slip? There's all these kinds of different things that you're thinking about, right? So like if you're able to narrow the focus, right, and you can eliminate even that stuff, right? Thinking about your feet on the concrete, all that stuff, and you really narrow it down to I'm stepping in the circle because I want to throw as far as I can for the Lord today, and only the Lord. That's when you see some of your greatest achievements, and it again it narrows that focus and keeps you from getting into your own head, and that's where you get all those anxious thoughts, right?
So that kind of brings me when you're talking about being all these technical things that you have to do.
Hmm.
When you're stepping up to throw the hammer, there's all these technical things. How much are you thinking about those things, or how much are you allowing your training to just take over?
So if you would have asked me that a couple of years ago, I would have overly thought about the technique
Okay.
because I am a little bit of a perfectionist, right?
Sure.
And so I think that definitely harms the throw because at the end of the day, um, my former coach used to say this, but it was simple yet difficult, right? Because at
Sure.
the end of the day, if you're thinking about throwing hammer, it's turning to your left and stepping, right? It's turn, step, turn, step, turn, step. That's it.
Hmm.
And so I think back then it was, I tried to overcomplicate it with the smaller pieces, which actually caused me to not actually go 100%. And then recently, in the last like year and a half, that concept has flipped for me, right? When I've like, let me get back to what I enjoyed about this in the beginning. And it was, let's see how far I can throw this thing, right? And so practice, I really learned how to kind of build practice back into this is where we make the corrections. So when we get into competition, you no longer have to have this brain full of all these different things you have to do. Now you step into a circle. You have one, maybe two things max that you're reciting or visualizing, and then you go execute it. And that's it.
I I think that's the way to go. I love that answer, and it's kind of something I talk to parents about whenever they're like, it doesn't matter what the sport is, but when you get the parent on the sideline going, do this, do that, and they're doing these technical, mechanical things,
Hmm.
it doesn't go well, Alex. It just doesn't, because then you've got them thinking. And I know that they want them to perform well in that moment, but we don't fix those things in the moment. We fix those things in practice, and that has to become like a habit. Like, you don't have to think. Yeah. So I'm taking it then, now that you kind of switched your focus, this is a better thing for you, mentally, physically, performance wise as well.
Absolutely. It's helped in so many ways. Like I think definitely it's psychological, number one. It's just allowed me to compete with less anxiety, less perfectionism, right? And so it's really allowed me, like I said, allows me to compete more liberated, which also, as the psychological state also affects the physiological state. Uh, So I actually did my thesis on psychophysiological kind of
Dude,
work.
speak. Okay, so I get tired of talking to this with athletes and telling them that, like, listen, your thought and your thought process, it becomes embodiment in your body, and that becomes a problem, right? If,
Mhm.
like, what speak, give me your like, if like couple points from your thesis statement. So we didn't talk about this ahead of time, and I can already know what you're gonna say, or got an idea. So I just want to hear your take on it.
Yeah. So pretty much what I learned is that so the specific technique that I used, mental performance technique I used in my thesis was self-talk on collegiate athletes performing power cleans at 85% of their max, right?
Okay.
And the idea was, let's see if they did better than the control group. And so the what it ended up finding out that whether it was negative or positive self-talk, right, actually still showed better workload compared to the control group that looked at a brown tan piece of paper, right? And so what we learned in my study, because I also did a qualitative portion of the study, is
Okay.
that whenever somebody actually had self-talk, they were actually allowed to persevere more. We also hooked them up to EMGs. And so, again, just for people who don't know what an EMG is, it basically sends electrical impulses that you can read from your muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what we found was that typically people, and we attached it to the quads, right? And so, what we found is that the self-talk group actually had more efficient muscle patterns from the quads. So, in theory, it actually reduced fatigue from a neurological standpoint.
Mm, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now you didn't. So now, but now I got to ask: did you tease out then negative versus positive self talk?
Yeah, a little bit. And so what we found again, positive self-talk was much better than negative self-talk in terms of workload and in terms of overall tonnage, right? And again, it also showed the same thing. It showed that the efficiency within the muscular system that you use for the power clean was working at a more efficient level. The neuromuscular pathway was very efficient, and there was no wasted energy, right? There
Mm,
was better synchronicity.
I love that. I think a follow up study cool would be like, because I'm a believer that a lot of people believe that the negative self talk is more helpful. I don't think that's true, but I think that it can be helpful in the short term. But
Yes,
a long term study over these individuals that practice negative versus positive would be really helpful as well.
absolutely.
Because I think that's where I always say negative self-talk is a great short-term motivator with long-term consequences. And we
That's
don't,
good. I like that.
because it's true, because but you get a lot of coaches and a lot of athletes that, like, hey, if I just got to tell myself I'm a fat slob and get off the couch and do it, and then I'll do it. Well, you say that long enough, you start to believe it, and then you just don't get off the couch, right?
Yep.
So
I love that we got into that. I wish but that's good. I love that I'm finding more of these athletes are doing a lot of stuff and they know it. And I love that the ideas are starting to get more commonplace so that it can filter down to youth athletics so that we can preach this stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is a kind of a personal question here. So my son, I told you he's a college basketball player. His friend is a Division III collegiate hammer thrower. Okay.
Okay.
And they have a bet. Here's their bet, and I want your opinion. So my son and his other basketball friend, I mean, these are guys. They're college basketball players. They're not slobs. They're strong kids, and they got a bet. They get to throw the hammer. Each throw it and see if their amount can equal the hammer thrower's one throw.
What do you
So the two basketball players have to throw the hammer.
Okay.
And you add their length together to see if it can beat the hammer thrower. And these guys, the two basketball players, have no idea how to throw a hammer. Right. so that's the bet is like who's your money on?
Can I ask some follow-up questions before I get
I love it. Yeah. Shout out to Hunter the thrower and Lane and McGrady the basketball players, but this is a big argument going on here.
I love this. So the hammer thrower, how long has he been throwing hammer?
That's a great question. He's I think he's a junior in college, so he's been doing it for, I think, 3-4 years at least. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They're not beating him.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay. No. I love it. Hunter will love that. We'll see. We'll see what the result is, but that's what he says. He says it's way too technical, and you're just gonna throw it and look like an idiot and maybe hurt yourself. If
Absolutely.
Before.
And the reason why I say no is because he identifies as a hammer thrower. So he clearly cares about it and wants to throw it far, right? And then you add on the fact that he's done it for a couple of years, so he's obviously trying to learn how to get better at it.
Yes.
I say he wins.
Yeah. Versus these guys that are just going to go out there and muscle it out, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, they're probably going to fall. They're probably going to scratch and fall over and hurt themselves is probably what's going to happen. But
Bro, I don't think people realize how coordinated you have to be in order to throw a hammer. I think people make it look so easy on TV that people forget that it's actually hard.
I'm sure it's quite difficult. I was not belittling it at all because I look at it and be like, that's years of practice. And yeah. So, all right, Alex, last question. I always ask of every guest, what's the question that I did not ask you that I should have?
That's a hard question.
I know it is, and it's on purpose because I think I want to make sure that like people come in and be like, oh, I think he's going to ask me this, and then and he didn't, and I always want to make sure that I ask every question that I feel like we should have.
Okay, honestly I think I liked your question on kind of your pre-interview questionnaire.
Mm-hmm.
I like the question that you ask about how do you define mental toughness?
Yeah, lay it on me.
Yeah, and so my answer to that was that I think mental toughness can be defined as persevering through challenges, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do not think perseverance through how did I put this? But I don't think perseverance through things that are harmful, right? For your long-term well-being is mental toughness.
I like that. That goes to what I was saying earlier, right? That it's because that's so. I mean, I'm working on my book right now, and it's all about developing a positive version of toughness, not like the old school version of toughness where it's just like I just have to beat myself up all the time, and that's how. No, there has to be an element of intelligence and positivity to this as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Whenever you finish that book, please let me know. I'd love to get a copy.
I will do. It's I'm not a trained. I'm a professional coach. I'm not a trained psychologist, but I've lived a lot of this stuff. So it has, none of this stuff is theoretical to me because it's stuff I've had to use to do. So that gives it
Hmm.
an edge, and I will let you know, and I appreciate that. But you and I are on the same page on a lot of stuff. So this is fantastic. It's amazing. So Shane Fisher hooked me up with the American Paragons, started hooking me
Nice.
up with and that's how I got on with you. And so far, I think I've recorded now with, I want to say 6 or 7 US, and they're they're all think and talk like you.
Hmm.
And there's none of the negative stuff that I thought that we think. And it's all, so it tells me that the people at the top of their game, these elite performers in their disciplines, are practicing all this stuff, and it's starting to become more commonplace. And that just, man, that makes me feel good.
Oh, well, I mean, that's great. I think a part of being elite, maybe at some point from whoever you've interviewed, they've probably experienced that use of, negative self-talk, things like that to
Uh-huh.
try to push them forward, or the insecurity or the fear even to make sure they succeed, right? Um,
Yeah.
and I think there's a healthy, mature transition at some point in everyone's career where they realize, I think when people use that line, it's lonely at the top, and a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
don't understand what we do as elite athletes to begin with. And I think you don't have much room to allow the negativity to creep in because when you do, like we just talked about, I mean, it really does affect every aspect of your life, and so staying positive through that entire thing really helps you continue to stay really in your best form.
Well, yeah, like you said, you're doing all these stuff. You're hooking up electrodes to people's muscles, doing positive self-talk and all that. And you're talking about performance, but we're talking about how you feel when you go home at the end of the day.
Hmm.
And that's a bigger deal than how much you can deadlift or squat or hang clean or whatever you're doing, right? It just
Absolutely.
is. So Alex, fantastic. I love the interview. Can't thank you enough for taking time out of your day to record with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for allowing me on the show again. I really appreciate this conversation. I think sports psych is super valuable. I think positivity and positive psychology super valuable. Um, and honestly, like I said, everybody needs to find their superpower, and really hold true to that, and make sure you have your firm foundation. At least for me, I pray everyone gets to see the glory of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So.
Amen. Amen. And I love the idea that we're doing, that we can mix positive psychology in our faith, because I, it's a whole nother discussion, but there's a lot. I found a lot with the positive psychology and how it applies to a lot of the things that Paul taught and said. It's
Mhm.
there, man. It's fantastic. So,
Absolutely.
all right, Alex, thank you so much. I just can't say it enough. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, man. Good seeing you.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Welcome to Mental Mettle Coaching, where our mission is to help you learn to thrive in the face of adversity, not just survive it. We are passionate about empowering you to live, play, and work with a resilient and spirited mindset. Hi, I'm Matt Toman. I'm an ICF professional coach and keynote speaker. My background as an athlete, basketball coach, teacher, and school administrator has equipped me with the insights that resonate deeply with the schools, teams, athletes, and coaches I work with. However, it's my personal journey through anxiety, cancer, and an ischemic stroke in 2020 that truly brings authenticity to my presentations. While learning to speak and write again, I also pursued and earned my ICF coaching certification. Now the practices I embrace are more than theoretical concepts. They're a way of life. Developing a positive mindset is within reach for all, but it requires self-awareness and the repetition of intentional activities. At Mental Mettle Coaching, we'll guide you, your staff, and your students on this transformative journey. Together, let's forge your mettle.
So there's 3 things I want to really dive into on that interview. Okay. The first one is his idea of competing for an audience of one, and how ultimately you can't be working for others' approval, and your why cannot be for others. And Alex reframes that idea again through Colossians 3:23, and do all your labor as unto the Lord and not for human masters. And this makes his performance an act of worship and not a referendum on his worth. So some of the tips from that I think others can take is, before practice or competition, like, have a very simple intention. And today I'm playing for my audience of one. As a believer, as Alex is and as I am, that is explicitly, you do that for the Lord. And that makes it so clear and makes it so easy and makes it not focused on the tape measure or the scoreboard. And it lowers that anxiety and that pressure, and silently, thinking that, what am I doing this for? I'm doing this for the Lord and not for the scoreboard. And just replacing all of that anxiety and that worry about what others think and all those rankings, and replacing that with, what is the Lord thinking of my performance, and how can I make this a act of worship for him? Phenomenal advice. Phenomenal. The second point that I think is worth mentioning, which I talk about it all the time on the show, is to love the process more than the outcome. So Alex talked about how he had his best years when he enjoyed the daily work, the lifting, the technical reps, the incremental games, not just the big meets. When his results dipped, he had to rediscover that joy, that gratitude in the small things, and looking for those little goals. And so that's kind of the tip there, is after every session, list one thing you did better, one thing that you're grateful for. I talk about that all the time on this podcast. Train your brain to value the growth, no matter how small, and love that it's hard to make that growth, and really get into not overall goals, but today's goals. What's one little technical thing I can get on? What's this lift going to give me today? How do we dive into that process and don't focus too much on these large outcomes, but these daily outcomes in this daily process? That's the second one. The third one, master your self-talk. So Alex talked about this in a couple ways. First, he kind of say it nonchalantly, and how that's how he works with kids about their superpower. And then we talked about how the Hulk and the Black Panther, and how to do this on intentional, and how he teaches kids to do that, to be thinking about it. But then he also blows me away by talking about that thesis that he does, where he even measures EMG in the thigh muscles when they're lifting, to show that, yes, positive self-talk improved performance and reduced fatigue more than negative self-talk. It is something that I think sometimes we feel, but we don't think that there's science behind it. We're like, well, maybe this is good for me. Maybe this positive self-talk is useful, but some people just flat out disagree and thinks that is not a thing, or don't believe it enough that they allow that negative self-talk to overcome their thoughts, or they don't think about anything. And what his study there showed, and what other studies have shown, that no, giving yourself positive self-talk in a workout, in a game, actually helps your muscles. It goes beyond the brain. There's a huge connection between our brain and our body. And we know this, instinctively, but we ignore it because we know how negative thoughts create negative feelings in our body that are not helpful. When we get anxious and we get uptight, we don't perform well. So it's things that we know instinctively, but the research is starting to show that, and Alex is showing it himself. So just master that self-talk. And it's not easy to do. I talk about with clients and coaches all the time that our self-talk is a controllable and we should only focus on controllables, but that does not mean that it's easy to control. And I understand that. And that is a process no different than the weight room. We go to the weight room looking to gain steps in our strength, in our physical strength, but we need to go into every day looking to build our mental strength as well, and knowing that that's a process as well. And we should celebrate that as well, because it takes a little bit of work to get that better. So find a way to build that self-talk. So that's those three things: is that audience of one, loving the process, and mastering your self-talk. And that is, it's nothing new on this podcast. I talk about it all the time, but this is coming from somebody that's a lot more decorated than I am and has a lot more experience in the arena of actually doing it than I am, because, as a USA Olympian, I mean, again, he's out there putting it on the line, and this is like, he puts everything he's got into this. So if you don't listen to me, listen to Alex, because he knows what he's talking about. So again, another fantastic episode with a USA Olympian. If you like this episode, go find the others. Like, share, subscribe. Do me a favor. I'm putting a lot more stuff out on social media. It's getting a lot of attention, getting a lot of likes and shares. I love it. Keep it up. Thank you so much for doing this. I couldn't do the show without the listeners and the viewers, and you guys are doing that, and I sure appreciate it. So like, share, subscribe, and help me out. Thank you so much. But for now, we're out of time. This has been the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Toman, and always remember to forge your mettle.
Thanks for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast. Don't forget to tune in every week for more insights and strategies to help you forge mental toughness and resilience. This podcast is brought to you by Mental Mettle Coaching, where we are driven by a passion for sharing knowledge and experience that empowers others to play, live, and grow with confidence. Our mission is to instill a resilient and spirited mindset in our clients, enabling them to confidently face adversity and actively seek new challenges for personal growth. At Mental Mettle Coaching, we offer individual coaching, group coaching, and professional development for schools and businesses. Whether you're an athlete, educator, or professional, we're here to help you unlock your potential and thrive in every area of life. Until next time, keep growing, stay resilient, and always remember to forge your mettle.